recommended this book before, but if you want to read just one book to help you think about the events of the past few weeks, this is the one I would recommend. It documents the unfairness of the American criminal justice system, but it does so with extraordinary balance and empathy and even grace. It's a wonderfully written book. For the last look, I wanted to address a question that many people have asked me one way or another, especially people who live outside the United States. The question is simple. Why is it that blacks seem to have such difficulty moving ahead in America? Don't other ethnic groups also face discrimination? Don't they also have to deal with poverty and exclusion? This came to mind recently when I watched a short clip of Martin Luther King being asked that very question during a television interview in 1967. In 2 minutes, he brilliantly and eloquently answered the question. He explained that blacks are unique in being the only ethnic group that was brought to America involuntarily in chains. They labored as slaves until finally in 1865 they were freed. But even then, while a massive number of Europeans were coming into the country and receiving land in the Midwest and West, African-American slaves, despite having worked for 250 years in America without ever being paid, received little to help them get on their feet. I would add to this the willful destruction of the black family through much of American history. Because slaves were not treated as human beings but property, the law did not recognize their marriages nor even their rights over their children. Families were routinely and forcibly broken up. After 250 years of slavery came 100 years of state-sponsored discrimination, and then civil rights. But soon began what Michelle Alexander has called the new Jim Crow, a system of policing and mass incarceration that has made it so that a black man in America has a 1 in 4 chance of being incarcerated in his lifetime. This is according to the Sentencing Project estimates. Martin Luther King also put an emphasis on the psychological damage that was done. To maintain slavery and segregation, there had to be an ideology of white supremacy, one that left lasting effects on both blacks and whites. Here is King summing up his points.
Emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
And that is why the situation for blacks in America is different.